rabbit may easily be overlooked against a background of long grass. It needs to use its sensitive nose, prominent eyes, and long ears to detect its many enemies.
I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I was not expecting the first video about the unknown to do such Iron Man numbers like it did, but I got a lot of feedback asking me to do more of them, so I thought about who I'd do next. Recently, the decision was made for me when my friends and I were out playing Magic the Gathering and one of them said, "You should do a video about the Huntress." Well, who am I to reject the will of the people? I will say, as a warning for the B-roll, I am not good as the Huntress. I even did a bit of tunneling in one of the matches, and it was only because I panicked and not out of malice. Not that any of this shit fucking matters, the rules of DBD are all made up, but I try to be polite where I can. Anyways, let's set the stage where this all began. The Huntress, unlike the Unknown, wasn't built up with tons of teases or an ARG or anything like that, but to Behavior's credit, the game was largely still in its baby steps. A Lullaby for the Dark, the chapter that Huntress came out with, was only chapter 5. The only tease that the Huntress got was a single image before the actual trailer came out. This killer, as stated before, was developed during the relative infancy of Dead by Daylight, and as such, her power is pretty simple. I'd go as far as to say deceptively simple. I know that's probably been said to death, but bear with me. Have you ever been to one of those axe-throwing places where they have wooden targets and they let you just huck a bitch at them? I have, and it fucking rocks. Anyways, her power is essentially just that, a really big hatchet throw. You press and hold the left trigger, or the equivalent on PC, I don't know, and let it wind up. Letting it go releases the hatchet. Simple, right? There are some absolutely cracked individuals out there that get some whack-ass snipes with this killer, which I just don't understand, especially given that the hatchets have the hitbox the size of a smart car. Unless, that is, you're really trying to hit a survivor. Then sometimes it can have the width of a pencil when you least need it to be.
Attack. Got it down. Got it down.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Nothing too crazy for her power, to be honest. Each time you hit a survivor, it takes a health state, rinse and repeat till you have to do the walk of shame to a locker. From my perspective, using all of the critical thinking skills I can muster, I would imagine that Iron Maiden and Darkness Revealed are good perks for her. I'm sure that's already been said to death by other YouTubers, but I digress. Anyways, let's get to the part that I'm really excited to talk about. I was gonna follow my exact same chapter order as the Unknown video, but I feel like talking about the lore first before moving to the presentation and overall vibes of the chapter. Anna's story starts in the early 1900s. She's raised by her mother in a small cabin somewhere in the cold forest wilderness of Russia. She had toys and masks made of wood and lived an overall pretty simple life. However, on a particularly dangerous winter, Anna and her mother were forced to brave the elements and hunt an elk in a desperate attempt to replenish their stocks of food. The elk eventually spotted Anna and charged towards her, but her mother, axe in hand, leapt in front of it and was impaled upon its antlers, dying in the process but landing several axe blows into the elk. While she and the elk slowly died together, Anna's mother hummed her favorite lullaby to calm her down. You may have heard of it. Over the years following this event, Anna became an adept hunter, living a wild, rugged lifestyle. She killed small prey at first, but eventually worked her way up to the likes of wolves and bears. Eventually, human travelers entered her territory, and she hunted them all the same, scavenging their supplies and tools for her own use. There was an exception, though, in the form of little girls. Seemingly trying to follow in the footsteps of her mother, and wanting companionship, she sought to nurture them in some form, bringing them back to her home. She tied them to a wall in a twisted sense of protecting them from the elements, giving them books, toys, and other trinkets in an attempt to build rapport. Of course, Anna had no idea what she was doing on this front, and all of the girls she took in died of starvation, sickness, or hypothermia. This created a sort of enraged madness in Anna's psyche, and when she ran out of travelers, she would raid nearby villages and steal the daughters of the family she'd massacred. In an effort to calm the children as this happened, she donned a wooden animal mask crafted by her mother all those years back. Eventually, the Great War made its way to Russia, and Anna would slay German and Russian soldiers alike. After the war, however, tales of the Huntress would fade, lost to the trees of the Red Forest. Generally, every original chapter in Dead by Daylight is centered around some sort of central theme, be it something directly connecting the survivor, map, and killer, or something else. Given David King is from the modern day and the Huntress is from the early 20th century, give or take, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's something more subtle.
Don't ask me why, I've just woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah? Because I live in a shithole! Do you know what I mean? I hate the fucking place! I fucking hate it! It's full of dickheads! I fucking hate it!
In this case, the overall theme of Lullaby for the Dark centers around resilience, survival, and family. David was raised by a really wealthy family where he had it all but squandered it, whereas Anna was raised in the woods until her mother's abrupt death and had to scrounge and hunt the natural landscape to survive, and thrived in her element. Something I like to do when an original chapter comes out is determine what subgenre of horror the devs and creative team were going for. For example, End Transmission is pretty easily recognizable as being sci-fi horror, and All Things Wicked being inspired by analog horror and creepypasta fiction, etc. For the Huntress, I really thought about what sort of subgenre category to give her in my own approximation. There's one part I left out of the lore section because it's gonna play into this component pretty heavily. After Anna started to carve her way through villages and raiding them for their daughters, she became something of a local folktale. As the official lore snippet reads, and I'm just gonna read this verbatim, villagers spread the legend of a half-beast lurking in the Red Forest, the Huntress, who killed men and ate little girls. Now this is interesting to me, and kind of gave me a eureka moment. Digging into the lore, it can easily check off a lot of the bullet points that would lead to the perfect approximation of what category the Huntress falls into. Folk horror is a type of horror that uses elements of folklore, superstition, religion, often presented with paganism if the fiction is written with a Western lens, rituals, cults, sacrifices, and nature as vehicles for the horror being conveyed in the story. As far as the actual locations, they are often rural or otherwise taking place very close to nature, with isolation being a hugely prevalent theme, which is also very much present in the stories of both Anna and David, connecting them further. Now, religion, cults, and other supernatural elements aren't particularly at play here, with a huge asterisk to one of those, but the element of folklore is all too front and center. Her story, to me, reads not like Midsummer, Lamb, or Apostle, but rather like Dead by Daylight's take on a Brothers Grimm fairy tale. Directly mentioned in the lore is how the villagers would spread tales of the Huntress, a half-beast stalking the woods who slaughters men and takes their daughters to her spooky house in the woods to be eaten. For one, it ties very closely to the lore of Baba Yaga, who would later go on to be a skin for the Huntress, but also just feels like the kind of story a mother would tell their girls before bed to get them to behave or something like that. Now let's get back to that asterisk I mentioned just a moment ago. In one of the tome lores, the Huntress is referred to as a Bodark by German and Russian soldiers who have allied themselves to deal with her. The DBD wiki elaborates on this by stating that a Bodark is a werewolf that can transform at will, and are known for hyper-awareness and heightened senses. But outside of this and blog posts from niche interest communities, I couldn't find anything about Bodarks for sure to do a deeper dive. Maybe I would need to find some books that cover Slavic folklore more deeply, but that's not necessary as it stands. If you guys want me to do a video going over a deep dive on werewolves or some other folklore monster, however, drop a comment. I read as many of those as I can, and I like talking about this kind of shit. Anyway, this label of the Huntress being dubbed as a werewolf-like monster makes sense, given how her story is framed before, especially because she wears the mask of an animal and moves at probably superhuman speed regardless of what her actual gameplay will tell you. This werewolf label especially seems like an intentional beat because of the lullaby that Anna's mother would sing to her, the song that would become so iconic for the character of the Huntress. It's called Bayushki Bayu, or Hushaby. Thank you to Jasmine Lee of the Dartmouth Folklore Archive and Katya Pronichenko for posting an English translation and providing context for this song. This is a lullaby that was sung to help children sleep, which is real fucking ironic when you find out that it's about a wolf coming to eat children who sleep too close to the edge of the bed on their side. Yeah, good luck sleeping tonight, kiddo. In the game itself, the lullaby is performed by... I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to butcher it, but it's her. Lead programmer of the game at the time, and also the overall voice actress for the Huntress. Needless to say, her renditions of the Huntress's vocalizations are iconic in their own right. Speaking of music, it took a long while for the Huntress to get her own menu theme, which in a sense is fair given that Lullaby for the Dark was so early in DBD's history, and it retains a lot of that dark, tied to nature aspect. The thing I don't understand is why the hell she didn't also get unique chase music in that update. And yeah, sure, the Lullaby practically is her terror radius, but I think that she ought to get something with a little more oomph when you're actually being chased by her. Fortunately, a buddy of mine who's got a real knack for horror music and chase themes thought of this too, and made his own renditions of a potential chase theme for the Huntress. One focuses a bit more on the lullaby, and another is more focused on the sort of brutality of the hunt, as he puts it. I'll play a small portion of the latter one here, but also link the songs in the description and in the top right corner if I can figure that out. Also, go subscribe to him, his music kicks ass. There is one point of presentation I want to touch on before we move to the next section, and that's a big standout cosmetic for the Huntress, the Were-Elk. Now, I don't know what to make of this skin at first. Is it intended to be Anna herself, or supposed to, in some timeline, have killed Anna and, taken her mask? Or in the most wild card answer, is the Were-Elk Anna's mother from another universe who didn't die from the elk's antlers in the lore, and instead became a lycanthrope? The lullaby is sung by the creature, so I'm not sure what this can mean. And the only lore snippet that the skin gets is, I'll just read this verbatim. The injured traveler found refuge in a small village. Warming himself by the fire of a modest tavern, he told the locals about his encounter with a beast lurking in the nearby woods. Not much to go off of. I just had to mention it though because of how wild and unique it is. Given that DBD has a weird multiverse kind of thing going on, it can have any number of explanations. Tell me your favorite, or suggest what you think of it. I'm very curious to know. I wasn't super familiar with the Huntress before this video. She came out in 2017, and I started seriously playing this game around the time the Blight came out in... Autumn of 2020? Jeez, time flies. Gross, I don't like that. Anyway, I wasn't very into the Huntress at first. I thought the mask was kinda goofy, which I've since heavily changed my mind on. And I didn't like her power because it required me to aim, and I have the precision of that sniper calling Gus Fring's bluff, but if he was actually trying to hit him. Guess which class I play in Deep Rock? Spoiler alert, it's this one, not this one. Rock and Stone. The Huntress is a character I'm simply not built for. That's why I like Jimmy's iconic exploding gunk, because I only have to aim a fraction of what could be called decent and operate purely off of orc imagination magic to land my shots by divine miracle. Please, don't ask me to play Deathslinger, I will cry. That all being said, I really like the Huntress. I feel she's very iconic for the game's overall identity and recognizability, and has some great lore. And not to mention that in the hands of a skilled player, she is absolutely fucking bananas. She has that complexity and simplicity that I think is really great, instead of having a killer power as long as a CVS receipt. Someday, artist, I may get to you. You were suggested once, at least. I don't know. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I want to wish you all a happy Halloween, and I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to like, comment, subscribe, share, and if you want to see me play horror games every so often, follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/terrorallthetime. Until next time, have a good one. Leave me alone! Ah! Ah!